Princess Leia hairdo on? Check. Hey everybody, welcome to Lecture 7. Wow, Lecture 7. If this was a semester class, we'd be about halfway over. I'm halfway through it. Whew. Anyway, this lecture is going to be all about sample and hold on the Korg MS-20. Now, question. How many of you out there regularly, sometimes, occasionally, show of hands, actually use the sample and hold on your MS-20? Show of hands out there. How many of you? Yeah, not too many of you. Guilty is charged. Me neither. And it was kind of bugging me because it's so prominent. And I think it could be so cool, but I haven't spent a lot of time messing with it. And you probably haven't either. Maybe you have. I don't know. So if you have, and you're a sample and hold expert, and you know everything about how sample and hold works on the MS-20, then congratulations, go, move, off, you're done, don't listen to this. But if you have an interest in how the sample and hold actually works, I'm going to do a deep dive. We're going to come across something about it too. Well, it's called a sample and hold. It's really not. It's something quite different. And then after all this deep dive, there's always this swell, so what? So I'm going to try and come up with a so what as well, and to apply the sample and hold in a way that maybe helps us be more successful with it. At least me, and hopefully you as well. So, without much further ado, let's get to the telestrator. I gotta draw pictures, right? Let's run the pictures. First, let's just kind of talk a little bit about what sample and hold ideally is. And what you have is a function block. We'll call this the sample and hold function block. It's going to have an input, some kind of signal, typically a voltage, right? Because it's all voltage control stuff here with the MS-20, a voltage in, and a voltage or signal out. And there's also going to be some kind of a clock, some kind of a periodic signal that tells the sample and hold device to do something, to maybe grab a sample and hold it. And this clock is usually a square wave. It doesn't have to be a square wave, but it typically can be a square wave. And sometimes these square waves run from 0 to 5 volts, to 0 to 12 volts, right? There's some voltage, periodic voltage frequency, or a periodic voltage at some frequency. That some frequency is from beginning to end of that square wave, some time t. So maybe we should talk a little bit about what that clock, that square wave, even kind of looks like, what it means, right? That's pretty important. We're trying to tell a little device to maybe do something here, right? So again, we have our sample and hold device. Sample and hold. We had a voltage in. It was being modified, became a voltage out. It's being modified by the device that's the sample and hold. And the sample and hold device is actually being controlled on and off, sample and hold, by a clock. It's being controlled. The clock's like a switch, on off, on off, on off. And when depending on how it triggers, we'll talk about that in a second, the sample and hold device grabs the sample and holds it. And then when the clock signal departs, or turns itself off, the sample and hold device releases its last hold, being ready for the next hold. Now this clock is typically a square wave. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's go down, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Down. There you go. There's a square wave. Looks square. And we talked about it earlier being like from 0 volts on up to 5 volts. Now some sample and hold devices, clocks, when they look at this signal, this is a 0 to 5 volt signal. It's going and my noise being voltage, right? Okay. There's a leading edge to a square wave, leading edge, LE, and a trailing edge to a square wave. We'll call that TE. So our sample and hold device could be triggered by a leading edge voltage change. It's going from 0 volts, and all of a sudden, now this is not, it looks square. There's actually a little bit of time. It takes some milliseconds or microseconds to go from 0 to 5 volts. But at some point, there is a threshold. The engineer somewhere made a threshold and said, you have reached this threshold. I am now sensing a clock pulse. I'm going to turn on and activate my sample and hold. And then it'll do it again next time over here. There will be a delay time as this voltage stays on. It basically latches the device, and the device is spinning out a voltage, V out, V out, V out, right? And there'll be a decline, and the device will sense that voltage drop, right? And it'll come back up and say, oh, another leading edge. That's another trigger. Right? That's another trigger. And I'll show you how that works in a sample and hold device. It can also happen on a trailing edge. Exact same way though, right? The device senses the voltage increase. There's a steady voltage. There's a decrease in voltage as it comes off that square wave. And at that point it says, oh, there's my voltage trigger point. I'm going to latch on. And it stays on and holds and holds and holds that V out based on what the V in was, and it holds and up and comes. And then the next trailing edge comes up and the voltage came up. The device says, okay, I hear you, I feel you, but I'm not ready to trigger it yet. There's my next trailing edge. There's my next trigger to release and hold the next sample. So you can have a trailing edge trigger or a leading edge trigger. Both of these triggers can trigger a sample and hold device. So at the beginning of the lecture, I talked about a little secret. A dirty little secret. It's not dirty, but it's a bit of a secret. All right. So Fumio Mieda, he's the guy on the left in this photograph. He's the chief engineer of the original MS-20. And he put on the front panel of the device, sample and hold. The classic sample and hold. But what really is going on is it's a track and hold device. So we're going to talk about the two different devices here in a second. But what I want to show you here is sort of, remember we talked about the device. That's what this bad boy is sort of representing here. This analog signal is the signal in. In this case, we have this voltage in, right? Remember the V in, voltage in. And there's our voltage in. And our output is voltage out. And it's a sample and hold output. So a sample and hold is, pull the pen out here, is when the device is triggered, it grabs and holds a voltage. And it gets re-triggered, whether it's on the trailing edge or the leading edge of our square wave. You know what? It's kind of like a door. An opening, and the sample and hold device is kind of like an opening and holding of a door. So let's say I had a door, all right? And I had I had a light and a door. And I had some light coming in. I had a green light coming in, and it was like a flashing light. And it came in a sequence. You know, it was green, blue, orange, red. Green, blue, orange, red. Green, blue, orange, red. And then I got a door. And I'm opening and closing this door. So I open the door, and the first time comes through green. Green. The door opens and closes, but the device keeps pumping out green. Keeps pumping out green. Next time I open the door, again, periodically with my stepped wave. Next time I open the door, whoa, it's a red light now, and the red light comes pumping. The door closes, but the device sample and holds, it holds red light. It holds red light. Does it again. Next time maybe it holds green again, and then maybe orange, depending on the periodicity, the frequency of the period of this door opening and closing. Sample and hold, samples it and holds it. Interesting to kind of note is that light is an electromagnetic wave with a frequency. All right. Well, so is sound. And so in our case, we're doing voltage control, and our voltage control is being controlled, is controlling the sound that the device, messed up my name here, the device puts out. All right. So whether you're talking about a sample and hold of a door for a light or a sample and hold of door for a voltage, in this case, this analog voltage signal, door opens, and on the MS-20, what it actually looks for is a 0 voltage. And I say 0 voltage, but that's not necessarily true because I've gone ahead and played with the device. And with the device, I haven't played with it a bunch, but enough to know that if I put in a 3 volt signal and a square wave that goes down to 1 volt. So it goes up to 3, down to 1, up to 3, down to 1. If I do that, the device will function. The device will function. And it will function and hold at the 1 volt. It'll hold at 1, it'll hold at 0, it'll hold at negative 5 volts. What it's looking for, remember that trailing edge thing I talked about? It's looking for a trailing edge, and that's where it holds. That's where it holds. But the problem is, it doesn't hold it for long. With a sample and hold device, when it was on the trailing edge coming down, it would hold itself until the next trailing edge. You can see that do it here. And then it would hold it again. It goes up. Next trailing edge coming on down. Holds that, right? It would hold the voltage signal, the output sample and hold, while it was, once the door closed. And it wouldn't reopen and close the door again. It wouldn't reset until it saw a trailing edge voltage, a voltage drop. In our case, some voltage positive till 1 or 2 volts below that. In this case, 3 to 1. When I tested it with the oscilloscope and my function generator, I didn't go far enough, but I could have gone further. The point is, it's a trailing edge device. And if you're going to connect it with some other synthesizer, as long as you have a voltage drop, I'm going to say, well, at least as far as I know, at least a 2 volt drop, but maybe more, it's going to grab a hold of something. The problem with the MS-20 is it's track and hold. The only time it holds is when the voltage is actually at the low voltage. So let's say I was playing with this 3 and 1 volt, though on the MS-20, I think it's like a 5 volt to 0 volt down to ground at rails. I think that's what it is. So if it was 0 volts or 1 volt, whatever this lowest voltage is, right, the limit of the lowest voltage is, that is the only time the sample and hold device, and really track and hold device on the MS-20 is holding that device, is making the device hold the voltage, the incoming voltage. When it is not at its nadir, its lowest point, it's allowing the voltage signal to come in to pass through the device, to track the device. So for example, here, I'm only going to hold when I'm at 0 volts. When I'm not at 0 volts, I'm going to pass through more voltage. The next time I'm at 0 volts, I'm going to hold. Then I'm going to release. It's going to go back up to 5 volts. Well, do you know what it's going to do? It's going to keep on spitting out that voltage, right? It went from a hold to a track to a hold to a track to a hold. Then all of a sudden, the voltage goes back up to 0. Out comes another track. So what it does is it only holds the voltage when I'm at the low voltage. It only holds the door open when we're at the low voltage. Unlike on a true sample, classic sample and hold device, it holds the hold output signal, the hold voltage, until it feels the next trailing edge voltage. On the MS-20, it only holds that door open, solidly open, when it's at the negative voltage or the lowest voltage if you're running a 3 to 1 volt square wave, at 1 volt or a 5 to 0 volt, at 0 volts, or if you're doing plus or minus 5 volts. You could be doing plus 5 and minus 5. At minus 5 volts, the device will hold. But as soon as you depart that and start heading back up, at some point that threshold says, oh, I'm no longer holding, I'm just tracking. So it's track and hold. It allows the signal to come through. The only time it holds it is when the voltage is held at the low end of your trigger signal, at the low end of your clock. And I'm going to go ahead and show you that. So, oscilloscope, MS-20. Below down here is a matriarch. This red cable coming in is an LFO, a square wave low frequency oscillator coming off the matriarch. And I've got it coming in at plus or minus 5 volts. What I showed earlier, it could be 3 volts to 1 volt. I'm not quite sure how tight the high and low voltage could be before the trigger doesn't work on the MS-20. But here, safely, plus or minus 5 volts. So it's coming in as the trigger. I'm going to play with the mod wheel. Mod wheel is going to come on out as my in voltage to my sample and hold. Out voltage to my sample and hold is basically just going to go to my VCO2. So I'm going to drive and change and modulate a voltage control voltage into the voltage control oscillator 2 using the mod wheel. All right? And you'll see when it is at -5 volts, the low voltage down here, it holds. And when it departs that, we lose the hold. Okay, hear me. It takes a while for the oscilloscope to catch up, but you can hear me playing. There it is. So it's holding at the -5 volts and passing everything through at the +5 volts. -5 volts hold. +5 volts lets it pass right on through. So it's a track at +5 volts, a hold at -5 volts. That's not irritating at all, is it? That's not irritating. It's like I can't help myself. I still want to see, when does this sample and hold actually trigger? Trailing edge, leading edge, square wave, what? I want to get down to the last little bit because I really want to understand, and I want to help you understand how this darn device works. Okay. Back to the telestrator. The telestrator! Okay, so we have our sample and hold device, and we really now know that it's a track and hold. So we're going to go ahead and update that to track and hold. We're going to have a voltage source in, V in, and a modulated V out. And we're going to have a clock in. So this is sort of this is what we've been doing the whole time. This time, however, my V in is going to be a triangle wave. It's going to sweep from, I think it's like from 0 on up to, I think about 8 volts. I think something like that. It's a full, nice sweep. At the same time, rather than a square wave, I'm going to put in a stepped triangle wave. And the stepped triangle wave will go from +5 volts to -5 volts. And I have some squares here on the paper, so I can easily draw a stepped triangle wave. Up it comes. Oops, I blew it. And then, oh, down. Doggone it, there it is. If I could only draw, up again we go, right? That's what it's doing. So we're going to have this be the clock trigger source to the track and hold, and this the voltage in, and then we're going to measure and also listen to what comes out. So I have an oscilloscope trace and sound to go with it. And we're going to see what's going on here. This is not that far away, really, from a square wave, right? If you get right down to it, it's just taking the square wave in steps. Up, 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 leading edge, up, 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 down, trailing edge. So this is the leading edge and the trailing edge of the square wave. But we're doing it in voltage steps to see if we can see when this thing actually holds. What is the signal? What is the voltage difference? What is going on with this device? So here's a scope trace of the triangle wave that was produced by my matriarch, my Moog matriarch. It's just a voltage. It's a voltage triangle wave. I'm utilizing it to drive VCO2 on the Korg MS-20. And it sounds a little something like this. Yeah, that's not irritating. So that is an unmodulated voltage from the matriarch sweeping an LFO triangle up down, right? I think it actually went from 0 to 5 volts. I think that's what it went, 0 to 5 volts. Might have been 0 to 10. Doesn't really matter. It's a triangle wave, right? and it's driving the VCO2. Here is the result value utilizing a clock signal, and the clock signal in this case is the stepped triangle wave, and it runs from -5 volts to +5 volts. And those are about 1 volt steps. So there's 10 steps up and 10 steps down. And from our convention, remember we said their voltage convention, or voltage when the voltage was going up, that was our leading edge, and when the voltage was coming down, that was our trailing edge. That's our convention. It's just, obviously, you could go either way. You could call this the leading edge and this the trailing edge. It doesn't, it's the convention we've chosen. Well, I've chosen. When the voltage is going up, that's the leading edge. Voltage coming down, the trailing edge. Now let's listen to what that sounds like. This actual output sounds like. Hold track, hold track, hold track, hold. There you go. Holding and tracking, holding and tracking. All right, so let's take a peek at what is going on here. Hopefully you can see my cursor. One thing that kind of jumps out at me, again, this is the trigger signal, and this is the output voltage from the sample and hold device. One thing that kind of jumps out at me, I don't know about you guys, but when it is holding, it always triggers hold on the trailing edge of this drive clock signal, whether it's a square wave or in this case a stepped triangle wave. The voltage coming down, coming down, coming down, all of a sudden someplace right in here, right on this voltage step, I can't tell for sure exactly what voltage, but someplace it lines up, that voltage down enough, hit the threshold on the trailing edge, and the device said, time to hold. All right. And now the voltage continues to drop, and as it continues to drop, the MS-20 sample and hold, track and hold, holds that voltage. It comes on, down, down, down. Then it turns around, and now it's the leading edge, heading back on up, heading back on up. And at some point right here, on this wall of this step, the device says, we must be on a leading edge. It's time to start tracking. And it tracks. So the trailing edge down is where the signal holds. The leading edge up is where the signal releases, the hold releases. And if I kind of look at where this happened, right? This is this voltage scale. Somewhere, what is that? This is 0, 2, 4, 5 volt-ish, sort of it. I mean, it's ish. I don't have it completely centered. Actually, I do. It's not bad. But somewhere around, I don't know, what is that? 1.5 volts, 2 volts, someplace in here. It decided, that was low enough, I guess, to hit the threshold, to hold it up. And then coming back up, it hits it, I don't know, it seems like it hits it somewhere, looks like on this wall of this step on the way back up. So this voltage here, whatever that is, about 2 volts coming on down and about 1 volt coming back up, it decided, I'm on my way back up, time to track. Let's look at the next one over here. Now it's coming back down, back down, back down again, somewhere in here in this range. What is that? From 1 to 2 volts, it decides, you know what? I am ready to hold. I have dropped on my trailing edge. And down it goes. It's holding, it's holding, it's holding. It's coming back up. We're leading edge again, and someplace in here, well, maybe someplace around 2 volts, the hold releases and it goes back to tracking. How about this one? Coming down, someplace on this step down here, it decided, time to hold. And coming back up, someplace up in here, it decided to come right. So it's interesting. It seems like the track and hold signal, somewhere around 0 to 2 volts, that's the range. It's pretty tight, actually, right? And it's looking for some threshold on the way down and some threshold on the way up. Somewhere around now 0 to 2 volts. 0 to 2 volts. Someplace below there, it realizes it's low enough. Low enough to call it 0. Well, low enough to call it a rail, I guess. And it doesn't matter how much lower you go at that point. It's just going to hold. It's going to hold. And not until that voltage comes back up over this threshold, somewhere around 2 volts, looks like-ish, it releases the track and goes back, releases the hold and goes back to tracking. That is how this bloody thing works. In real life, when I'm teaching, It depends where I'm teaching, what campus I'm at. If I'm at the main campus, okay, the classes are pretty short. If I'm at one of the remote campuses, I'm teaching a lecture lab class, for example. A lecture lab class can run between 3 and, if it's a 1 night a week class, it can be run between 3 and 4 hours. A 3 or 4 hour class, of which time I'm lecturing for maybe 2 hours. Imagine that. Listening to me blather on for 2 hours. Oh, and I can do it. So we're sitting right now at about 24, almost 25 minutes. So the few of you that are still here with me, I'm going to run this a little bit like a lecture lab. So we've just finished the lecture portion. We're about to blast into the lab portion. And typically what I'll do before we blast into the lab portion, because at that point the students are like, holy crap, now I actually have to do something, I ask for questions. Let's start the lab with some questions. So we'll do the same thing. Let's go ahead and get some questions going. Anybody, any questions you got?
Did you say that sound is an electromagnetic wave? Is that true?
I did? Yeah, I think that was with the color wheel thingy. I said it was. No. So sound is not an electromagnetic wave. Yeah, light is. We use electromagnetics to create sound, to create oscillators, to do stuff. That's all electromagnetics. Sound is obviously a pressure wave through a media. It's not an electromagnetic wave like light. That's a good question though, and I apologize for, I go, as you all are seeing now, I go a little bit fast and loose with my facts sometimes because I'm going. All right, good question, thank you. Next question.
You showed the trigger points to be 2 volts and 1 volt, but said 2 volts and 0 volts. Which is it?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I think I was a little fast and loose with my numbers there as well. So yeah, okay. I will clear the air because you guys now see I'm kind of wide open when all right, so the device is both a leading and trailing edge device. It's looking for both. On the way down, the trailing edge on the way down from the clock signal, it triggers hold at 2 volts. From what I've measured, that's what it does. And it holds below 2 volts. On the way down, it's holding. On the way back up, that's the leading edge to the next pulse. When it reaches 1 volt, again from the measurement on my MS-20, when it reaches 1 volt, it releases. So trailing edge, 2 volts down, hold. Leading edge, 1 volt back up, release. Full stop. And so as you guys are messing with your oscilloscope, if you have one, or messing with whatever clock signal you might have, that's where I believe the device is going to grab and hold its sample. Okay, excellent question. Next.
Did you sneak out and get a haircut?
Oh, yeah. You got me. Yes. Yes, I did. I did sneak out and get a haircut. Guilty as charged. All right, that's good. Thank you for that. That's good. Next question.
Open, door closed, latched, one latched. I'm not seeing how this applies to the MS-20.
Door open, door closed, latched, okay. Yes, I mean that really is the crux of what we're trying to show here, right? So maybe at this point I'm going to say that is an excellent question, and that gets us going into the lab portion of the lecture. So let's go ahead and zip on over to the lab portion and see if I can answer that question and then specifically apply it. We are absolutely going to do it. We are going to apply it to the MS-20. So I think there's going to have to be a little bit of a lecture here first, just to talk about a little bit more about what a square wave and pulse width looks like and how it acts on the MS-20. So let's do that next.
50% duty cycle. That's something I haven't spoken about yet,
in this lecture or lab here. And it's important to how we run the MS-20 sample and hold, track and hold. We talk about it in terms of this duty cycle. It's like the square wave amount, the pulse width amount. Pulse width amount. But that sounds a little nebulous, right? But when we talk about pulse wave duty cycle, that's a more specific kind of an engineering-based terminology. A 50% duty cycle, a 50% pulse width duty cycle, is 50% on, 50% off. Half the time it's at 5 volts in this example, half the time it's at 0 volts, 5 to 0. A 75% duty cycle, 75% of the time it's on. And down here, 25% of the time it's off. That's a 75% duty cycle. 100% duty cycle is it's always on. 0% duty cycle, it's always off. Oh, and look, here's a 25% duty cycle. So it's on 25% of the time and off 75% of the time. Well, that's interesting, right? Because we've been talking about this track and hold, right? We had the hold down here, the hold voltage down here, and the track going on up here. Well, even if you're at a 75% duty cycle, you've got lots of time to track and a little bit of time to hold. But if you flip it around, wait, hold on a second here now, because we've been talking about track and hold, track and hold, track and hold. But if I reduce the track time by thinning up the duty cycle of the trigger pulse, the square wave trigger pulse, I can minimize the track portion and in fact increase the hold portion. That's interesting. Well, then let's take this one step further. What if instead of a 25% duty cycle or a 0% duty cycle, we were at like 0.05% or something super, super fast, right? That our trigger up and down, right? Let's do that. Let's do this, right? Our latch on the way down and release on the way back up. Right? That's we've made this super, super narrow. And we do it again here. On the way down from 0 to 5, or from 5 to 0 volts, and then we grab our 2 volt latch and we latch it on the way down and we release it back on the way up. If we make that super narrow, like as in what is it? Actually, it's 996.46 microseconds. That's actually, if I turn the knob on the MS-20, the sample and hold pulse width knob, if I turn that all the way up so I can achieve as close to possible this 0% duty cycle, right? I'm not sure I'm not going to say it's 0.05%. I haven't done the math, but it doesn't really matter. It's about 1 millisecond. It takes 1 millisecond for that pulse to go boof, 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 boof on the MS-20. And at that point, there's really no track. There's no track. It's only a sample and hold. At this point, the release and the hold happens so fast, you don't hear any track time. It only goes from one hold to the next hold to the next hold. And we'll see that you could actually run the MS-20 as a sample and hold. Let's go to the lab, hook up an MS-20, do a patch, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So in our lab today, we're going to take an input signal, zip it through our track and hold, sample and hold device, and then we're going to utilize the output of the track and hold, sample and hold device. It's going to zip up into and modulate our legendary Korg MS-20 high pass and low pass filters. Legendary! Okay, anyway, so out it comes. And the input signal is coming from the Moog matriarch. It's this random wave looking thing. Over on the oscilloscope, it looks like that, the yellow trace. Here's what it sounds like. It sounds like, I don't know, an alien having a conversation with another alien. It's like a alien radio broadcast. So hey, look, that's not irritating at all. But look, if that's how you want to start your piece of music off with something like that, modulating the high pass and low pass filters with a random wave in, that's pretty cool. Why not, right? Also, if you note down here, I have our waveform set all the way down. So the pulse width off time is like almost 0. It's as close as I can make to 0. Pulse width off time being close to 0, that's like the 0 voltage is never being attained, or it's being attained so infrequently it's not being grabbed. Okay, that's 100% duty cycle. It's passing everything through the sample and hold device. But we can modify that. We can modulate that with our knob here. We talked about that before. Let's go ahead and give us some more alien noise here. All right. I'm going to go ahead and still doesn't sound great. Doesn't sound great. But you can see on the oscilloscope some hold and some tracking. Some hold and some tracking. And so what we're doing here is, as that signal comes out of the track and hold device based on the duty cycle, and that duty cycle pretty much should look awfully close to, let me put this here, it should look awfully close to a 50% duty cycle, is it? That looks like a 50% duty cycle. All right. As that 50% duty cycle on the clock modulates the track and hold, it's zipping on up into this little audio mixer. This audio mixer is a one little bear. I don't have a mult on the MS-20, and you guys have seen me utilize these things a lot in our previous lectures. In fact, I have one right here being utilized right now to be able to get a signal out for the scope. But I got to tell you, you start stacking these things, or I've seen the patch cords that stack, and then next thing you know, they're coming out 3, 4, 5, 8, 10, 12, 20 centimeters. It's like, holy crap. It's just waiting to be knocked over and broken. This little bad boy is super handy. You can have one in and distribute 5 outs. You could have 4 ins and mix them all and distribute 1 out. Super handy. So I'm utilizing this as a distributor of the output signal from the sample and hold. It's coming on up in here, and these 2 outs then are into high pass and low pass filter. This 4th out is simply going into the oscilloscope, and it's that we can see then the yellow trace, how the modulation is occurring on the high pass and low pass filters. So, next piece here, let's go ahead a little bit further now. Spin over here. Maybe you can see both. I think you can. I'm going to go over here now and take I'm off camera. There we are. I'll have to do it like this. I'm going to go ahead and take this and crank this all the way up to a duty cycle that's darn near close to 0.05%. I don't know if that percentage isn't real, but I can tell you what. I know the pulse width is 996.46 microseconds, or 1 millisecond. And that's what it looks like. That should look to you, all of you, like a true sample and hold. And in fact, it is. That is a true sample and hold. And we are sampling and holding the modulation on the high pass and low pass filters. I like it. But let's have a little bit of fun with this now. We're going to go ahead and dial back and get some more track. Because right now we are at pure sample and hold. And it sounds good. It's got a beat to it. Right? It's got a beat to it. But let's go ahead and... wrong knob. Let's give us a little bit of track in here now. Not too much. Ooh, I like that. That's cool. that little extra bit of motion, gives it some more feeling, kind of a organic sound to it. We're getting some alien in there, and the alien's giving us a little bit of interesting kind of variability when we're on the track. So it's not a full sample and hold, it's not a full track and hold, it's a little bit of both. Actually, a lot more hold than it is track, but just enough track to give us some interesting sounds. Nice. Hi, you made it. Hey, good for you. Yeah, that was a long one. But aren't they? All my lectures are long. Hey, my students complain about how long my lectures are, and now you can too. And as always, all this stuff I do is for you guys, just like my students. You know, but in your case, there's no midterms, there's no finals, there's no projects, there's no lab assignments, right? So this is completely for you, for your use. Plagiarism is the highest form of flattery except at a public university, so don't try it there. And really, I was planning on making a video about something else. Obviously, it was with the MS-20 and synthesis, but as I was playing with the sample and hold, I realized, I'm not exactly sure how this thing works. And I did my due diligence. I went on YouTube and did my YouTube search, and I really wasn't finding anything. It's like, okay. Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in. So that was the genesis, if you will, of the sample and hold lecture. But it was a journey. You guys took it with me, and I've been left really kind of humbled. Fumio Mieda and the Korg MS-20 team, it never ceases to amaze me what a fantastic sonic workhorse that team made for us, and for us to have access to it today, with the MS-20 Mini and the re-release of the MS-20, full size. We're a very lucky group, that is for sure. So, as always, you can find me at HA''DLBAH at YouTube. I'll be your first hit. If you have any questions, and as you know, I am happy to answer your questions. So when you see this video, if you've got some questions, add it to the comments, and I will do my darndest to answer your questions. I'm not always the fastest, but I will answer. I will get to it. It took me 2 months just recently. I felt really so bad, but I got to them. I got back to the question. What else? I have a comments page now, or a community page, because I have enough subscribers for a community page, and I will post to that. If you're a subscriber, occasionally you'll see something from me, and as always, if you are a subscriber, well, heck, you'll be the first to know when I put more of this stuff out. So, with all that, I'm going to get back. So I want to thank you all, and we'll talk to you later.